would you prefer to be a SpaceX investor taking 20% dilution here, or a Twitter/X.AI investor rolling into the largest market cap private company on the planet, maybe 6 months before it goes public? What you just saw is the rehabilitation of the IPO. I'm going to call it the end of stay private forever.
How should we read and interpret this seemingly pretty batshit crazy news?
Well, look, for what I mean, Rory probably has better thoughts than me, but he's done it before. It's not the first time. He's been doing this for years. So when Solar City needed more money and wasn't going to make it, he mashed that into Tesla. When different folks need loans from different folks, right? Loan cash, invest cash into XAI from Tesla. So it's hardly new load balancing his portfolio across the greater outcome and the greater good. We don't all have this luxury.
Agreed. I mean, my favorite Twitter quote, I've never been so many. And you're right, by the way, Harry, every week you come on and you say, this is the most exciting week ever. This week it's actually true. There was so much news, I barely got through it. But my favorite Twitter quote about this was, Elon has now bought Twitter 3 times in 4 years. He bought it standalone, then he bought it at X, and now he's bought it at SpaceX. He's bought the same he really likes that product, baby. Right? I mean, he's literally bought the same company 3 different ways. So you literally have to make entire buckets of things to talk about on this. The whole does it make sense bucket. How do you feel it industrially, for lack of a better word? In other words, do these companies go together, and what's the combined rationale for that? You got to discuss that. Then you got to discuss kind of how you feel about it. In every merger, there's always a person who does, if you sell the cheap thing to the guy who has the dear thing and you take stock, you win. And by definition, someone else loses, right? Now, if the industrial logic is enough, the combined entity makes everybody happy. So that's why that's the first conversation. But the second conversation is, at the margin, would you prefer to be a SpaceX investor taking 20% dilution here, or a Twitter/X.AI investor rolling into the largest market cap company and the software private company on the planet, maybe 6 months before it goes public? I mean, the way I phrase that question makes it clear what the answer is.
Yeah, although, maybe you guys thought through this better than I did. Superficially be like, listen, if I'm a SpaceX employee, why would I want this dilution in this deal, right? It seems like a bad selfish. Having said that, and that could well be true, the deal is structured in such a way, there's instant secondary for everybody, as I understand it, right? And it's also an instant markup. So SpaceX was worth $800 billion, a couple shows ago? Now it's worth $1 billion. So in the weird world of dilution, yes, we've been massively diluted, but on paper, our share price has gone up 25% and we can sell. So who gets to complain? You don't like it? Sell for a material markup from 8 weeks ago. And on paper, when you log into Carta, your share price is higher. It doesn't mean there isn't dilution, but it does kind of insulate some of the feeling of the dilution in the short term.
If you want out, you can get out. So yes, that's true. But again, I always feel like such a Debbie Downer when you talk about these things. If you were in Delaware, it's not just you can sell, but you have an opportunity. I mean, the way to think about it is you had this opportunity. You owned 100% of SpaceX. You want to hold it for the next 10 years. And now you own 80% of SpaceX and 20% of something else. At the margin, you probably would, you might at the margin have not preferred that. I mean, even on a simplistic revenue multiple, I mean, if this is an 80-20 split, which is $1 billion and 250, on a revenue multiple basis, my understanding is, yes, SpaceX is 19 billion, growing 30%, profitable, allegedly. Again, we haven't seen the data. And the other company is not doing, it's sub 4 million in revenue. So even on a revenue multiple basis, at the margin, you could skip it from a pure value to value perspective. Now, that's people playing small ball, which is why you got to go back to the first comment and say, if these things obviously should be together, and it makes a ton of sense for them to be together, then, being wrong 5% on price doesn't matter at some level, right? So now you actually are forced to talk seriously about data centers in space, because that's where, I mean, if you read Elon's note, which was wild, that's a good slug of where this is going. And you now have to have a developed opinion on the economics of data centers in space.
How does this change Elon's ability to compete with OpenAI and Anthropic, with his asset in the race being X? Does it give him unlimited cash that he didn't have before?